think the one of design for sure, because it's our point of departure. I think, our attention to new explorations in terms of shapes is the point of departure of the existence of watchmaking at Cartier. Since 1904, when we designed the first watch to be worn on a wrist, it never stopped, I think, and that exploration is key. I think design is one thing, but at the same time, if you don't have the same attention to the excellence in the making, it doesn't create the same type of emotion. So you cannot separate, I think, design and craftsmanship. I think at Cartier it's essential, and this collection, I think, gives a special emphasis, I think, to that combination of aspects in many, many ways, from the tank à guichet, for instance, which is effectively an extraordinary design because it goes even further than the regular tank towards the notion of essentiality, but at the same time, without the attentions to detail, without that extraordinary movement, which is a complication movement, which is a jumping hours movement, you wouldn't have the same perception. So I think that watch, for instance, illustrates that purpose. I think the tank à guichet is, in the context of global watchmaking, is a piece of jewelry in a way. So because of the eye of a jeweler, in the sense of proportions, in the privilege we give to the aesthetics, and how we try to master the technique at the service of the aesthetics, and also that watch expresses that philosophy in terms of design of Cartier, because beyond the idea of a tank, which is by essence also a notion of essential design, the fact that we get rid of a dial and it's the minimum presence of the jumping hours on one side and the sliding minutes on the other side, just little windows, I would say, just to preserve the purity of that volume, I think is really the essence of what Cartier stands for. It's true that we have permanent exchanges with very demanding collectors all over the world. This is very true. And there are things they know, of course, because of things that Cartier published, or many information they get on a regular basis of the history of the creation of Cartier, but some they don't have. For instance, the choice this year of a tank à guichet, it was our choice, because, before being able to propose it, we had to develop and redevelop a new movement for that. So it takes time, because that movement had to obey to some criteria, especially the volume of a movement, to allow to have the right proportion for this object. So everything started years ago, and before even a collector mentioned his or her desire of having this range in collection. I think there's a parallel between our own desire at Cartier, because of what we know from our archives and our production, and the knowledge of the collectors and their desire on our side. Very often there's a community of values and of knowledge, and that leads effectively to, let's say, an agreement. I think the attention given to Cartier production from museums is very important, because it shows how Cartier is an actor of the artistic creations since its beginning, and thanks to, I think, the will and the vision of Louis Cartier himself, who wanted that artistic dimension in all our production. And it's very important because, as you mentioned, the curatorial dimension is on the side of a museum, so it's always an external point of view on the Cartier production, which makes that point of view very, very interesting, because there's a notion of independence in the evaluation of the different creations of Cartier. So it's interesting for the visitors, and especially for collectors, to see how a scientific approach towards our production can help to understand how consistent through the years, through the time, the Cartier philosophy is reflected in its creation. I think what we wanted this time for the presentation, for the context of the presentation of our objects, that was a space that would be very pleasant for the journey, you know, the visitors in between all the windows. And a kind of freedom also, because there's not a constraint. You can choose your own path, your own journey through the presentation. And at the same time, there's a very discrete allusion to architecture. And that was on purpose, because as you know, architecture is very close to the way we look at design, because the three-dimensional aspect of our creations is very important. And architecture has in common with jewelry and the objects that are conceived to be worn, the attention of a human dimension. You live in a house, you live in a construction, and you live with your objects. So the link with the body, the sense of proportion is very key. And in that case, this year, of course, there's an allusion to very classic architecture through the arches, and it's we hope a subtle allusion to the essence of architecture.